companies that lead in selling outcomes versus selling inputs, those are the companies that are going to be positioned for great both market and financial success. We will see a continued merging of the way we deliver services with the way we deliver product. And that combination of services and product together will allow companies to prudently sell outcomes and governments to prudently acquire outcomes.
Welcome to the Future of GovCon, a weekly podcast that looks at what is happening now and how it will impact the future of our industry. I'm Jake Frazer, owner and CEO of Precision Talent Solutions. In leading one of the industry's top executive search firms, I talk to influencers across the industry every day. C-suite executives, growth officers, diplomats, senior government officials, and top flag officers. Every week, we bring in experts from across GovCon, cyber, AI, space, NATO, medical, and more. And we'll have them share the key trends happening today and how our industry will look in the years to come. So pour a cup of coffee and let's get started. Hey everyone, it's Jake with PTS. Welcome back to the podcast on the Future of GovCon, where we bring together experts from across the industry and talk about where is government contracting heading. And we're thrilled today to have a veteran of the industry, a great leader, a legend. Chuck Prow is joining us. I think he's down on vacation. Doesn't look like he's on vacation, but he's down in Hilton Head spending some time with the family. But he was kind enough to join us today. Chuck, thanks for joining.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So Chuck has been in the news for years. A lot of us see him. He's a 10-time Washington 100 award winner. So you've seen Chuck's picture in the newspaper quite a bit and probably have heard him on earnings calls. And he's been a good leader in the community. And it's a thrill to have Chuck here. We're over 30 years in the industry, not coming out of the military or the government perspective, pure commercial businessman that has been a leader in our community and has led one of the major primes with V2X prior to that, Vectrus. So, Chuck, you got up this morning and said, "I'm got to be on a podcast today." What came to mind? What were you thinking about?
Of course, what do you wear? What am I going to look like on a podcast video is the first thing. So of course, you go back to your training that they taught you in media training and put on a nice shirt. And this day and age, you don't wear a tie, you put on a jacket, and then you go upstairs and do the podcast. So I'm looking forward to talking to you. This is an exciting time in the GovCon industry. And I know you and your business are involved in, literally hundreds of, prime and subcontracts. You have a unique perspective on the industry as well, I know.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we're coming from. Is I always say that even you as a CEO, you're in your foxhole every day, right? And you're digging and you're trying to make your foxhole better. And we can help folks see what you look like from outside the foxhole and what's going on the other side of the hill. So that mezzanine perspective, I hope, can help our audience. Let's go back into your kind of early life. I know you went to school up in Northwest Missouri State University. Was the Bearcats, right?
Yes, sir. The Bearcats, the Fighting Bearcats, one of only two Bearcat mascots in the country. The other one, as you probably know, is Cincinnati.
That's right. Okay. So did you grow up in that area? Talk about a little bit of growing up, your parents, your family.
Yeah, born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. Went to Catholic high school, CVC High School in St. Louis. And from there, I played football and other sports in high school and was asked to go continue both my academic and athletic career at Northwest Missouri State and spent a good 4 years there. And from there, entered the business world.
I saw you majored in data before people even knew what data was, right? In your degree?
That was an interesting... That's not where I started. And the school, Northwest Missouri State, was actually adopted by a then top tech company called Digital Equipment Corporation. Many of the older cohort listening today will remember DEC. They're no longer in existence. They were bought by Compaq, and then Compaq bought by Dell, obviously. But they were one of the innovators in distributed computing. And because of that, very early in my career, I was able to work with clients and staff to build solutions that would begin to take computing, more to the edge of the missions, if you will, which, back in the mid 80s, early 90s was a big change from the way computing had historically been handled.
Did you know when you're a teenager, what did you want to be when you grow up? Did you have a sense for what you're going to do?
I knew that I would probably be in the business world. My father was a businessman. That's what I knew. I really enjoyed people. I enjoyed, had various sales roles earlier in my consulting career. So I was pretty confident that I would stay in the business world. It wasn't until middle of my career that I really found the GovCon space, and really my career moved from a vocation to an avocation. Being able to combine both business on one hand and public service on the other hand. And once I came to DC in the late '90s, I was pretty sure that I would stay here for the duration.
Very cool. Did you have family around government or military? Any kind of connection there?
My both my in-laws and my father and uncles were in the military. I had cousins who served in Vietnam, and I left high school just after Vietnam ended. So I was at a period. In fact, I went to the high school I went to. It was a Catholic high school, but it was also an ROTC school. So I actually had thoughts at the time of maybe going into the military following high school. But then when I, had the opportunity to continue my academics at Northwest Missouri State, I stayed at Northwest, and then, went into the business world directly after college.
Were you a good student? Did you go to class and do your homework?
I went to class. I was an average to above average student, to be completely frank. I was married and had a young family, so I was going to school and working and still involved in athletics. So I had a lot going on, but I always enjoyed school. And, as I matriculated through my career, I actually took an interest and spent a lot of time, even when I, ran large organizations and ultimately was a CEO. I was always involved as much as I could in the recruiting process, because the services industry, the services businesses are two things: their clients and their people. Everything else is a detail, right? Us as business people need to make sure that the P&Ls always work, and all the business aspects of what we do, takes the necessary shape for our investors and other stakeholders. But if you're not focused intently on your clients and your people, then ultimately you're not going to be very successful.
That's universally true, no matter the business. You're talking about recruiting. How did you get your first job?
Well, I went to, at the time it was a big deal to go to insurance companies because they were leaders in the application of technology. And they had an interest in distributed computing and introducing distributed computing into their overall kind of mission set, if you will. So the background with Digital Equipment Corporation and the proximity to it was Mutual Omaha was the company. Being in Northwest Missouri State, the recruiters came to campus, and it turned out that they had a big softball league too. And I think being an athlete, in addition to being an above average but not a great student, played a small role in the first job. But I'll just take it as they were looking for people who really knew distributed computing and were looking to introduce new technologies. And maybe it was because they were looking for softball players as well to enter the Mutual Omaha softball league. So who knows?
Try to beef up their roster. You were into technology really when the Atari was coming out, right? Like you did you have a vision of the importance of technology and what you see now? Has it overcome your expectations?
I don't think anybody in the mid '80s could have imagined what could happen, 20 years in the future. I guess there were some futurists out there who could. What was completely clear to me from the very early aspects of my career is that if you can put computing and other technologies into the hands of good people, good people will do great things. And, nobody likes to do their jobs the way they used to do their jobs back then. Everything was very manual and, everything was written down and stored in files. And you guys all remember that era. But from very early in my career, I could just see how jazzed up people and teams would be when you gave them capabilities that would allow them to be, better, faster, cheaper, if you will. And then you let the people do the work, right? If you imagine the future for staff, if you imagine the future for clients, give them an environment by which they can be successful. Good people will do really, really good things.
Keeps coming back to the people. That's a recurring theme. I agree. I think any industry that it is technology and people that's going to make you successful. When did you have the first people working for you? When did you become a boss?
That was early on in my career. It was just happenstance, because of the aspect of my career in distributed computing. And that's, by then it was late '80s, early '90s. There was just an enormous amount of energy placed upon moving what we now call computing at the edge. We didn't call it that back then. But because of that, you had to have young people like myself who could lead teams and work with clients and, ultimately knew how to manage a P&L or could learn how to manage a P&L. And we were given enormous responsibility. And I would say it was mostly just being at the right spot at the right time when the industry was going through an enormous inflection point. And it was great. When I look back at the things that I was able to be involved in very early in my career and the amount of responsibility that ultimately, I was able to assume, I think it has as much to do with anything as just circumstance as any personal attribute. It was just the industry needed people to step up then and lead and implement new and creative ways to utilize technologies, and it all worked out fine. And the people that I was able to work with, both clients and staff, kind of along that journey, is what I remember most. Sure, you remember the solutions, you remember the promotions, you remember all that stuff, but it's really some of the cool things we're able to do with clients, and they took risk with us, and in most cases we were successful with them. You always have a couple of cases where things are not as successful as you'd like them to be, but that's the part of the journey that I remember most. Again, the people and the solutions and the way we're actually able to change the way industry works.
So you started early career as a consultant with Ernst & Young and PwC, right? Which must have been ripe territory, given the evolution of technology for helping companies transform. Did you have a particular sector expertise that you worked on as a consultant, or did you work with all different types of industries?
Yeah, it was interesting. What we worked with mostly until I came to DC in the late '90s, it was mostly consumer packaged goods and industrial manufacturers. But I left Mutual of Omaha after only a couple of years and actually went to work for Digital Equipment Corporation and was there for a short amount of time when we did a joint project with Arthur Young. And when I saw how at the time it was the Big Eight, now it's the Big Four, we're able to integrate both the application of technology, doing large technology-enabled programs with their role in industry and business. It became very clear to me at that time that, that was a path that was attractive to me. Then, as you know, Arthur Young became Ernst & Young. And the partners I worked with at Arthur Young, this was before non-competes existed, They walked across the street and went to Coopers and Lybrand. Shortly after that, I joined them a couple of days later. And we focused on, by that time, it was industrial and consumer packaged goods companies, implementing solutions that would allow them to improve the logistics and supply chain processes of their particular industries. So we spent a lot of time in transportation. We spent a lot of time what we used to call just-in-time and total quality management, and implementing systems that would allow businesses to work in a more agile way through the application of technologies, while obviously keeping their inventories lean and their business processes clean as well.
So you talked about kind of the late 90s getting into government contracting. And if you look back at that era, that was well past the thaw of the Cold War. That was the era of the Balkans when I was deployed as a young soldier. That was the very early days of the internet, right? What got you into government contracting? What was the hook? Who approached you? How'd you get your first job on the government contracting side?
Well, at the time, I was approached by Wood Parker. Those of you who have been around the industry for a long time, Wood was a very influential leader for a number of years in the industry. He was a partner at Coopers and Lybrand and asked me to come out to then start a technology business for Coopers and Lybrand, which had about a $300 million consulting business in the government, but no real technology per se. Shortly after arriving in DC, the merger with Price Waterhouse occurred, and I became the leader of the technology business for the combined PwC. And then, as you GovCon historians would then know, that shortly after that, IBM acquired PwC Consulting. And then I joined IBM through that acquisition. So really, from the beginning of my consulting career, I never really changed jobs, quote unquote, from that first big 8 job at Arthur Young. It was just through a series of acquisitions and mergers that led me to IBM in 2002. And by the time the IBM acquisition happened, and this was really post, if you historians of GovCon and government in general remember that the Gingrich Clinton combination in the late 90s really set the foundation, I believe, or set the conditions for rapid transformation of government processes. Remember Al Gore, had the redefining or reimagining government. There was a big downsizing. There was a tweaking of the acquisition rules to allow agencies to take some risk and to begin to implement what at that time was a novel concept. We used to call it commercial off-the-shelf software. And the beginning of that transformation in the way government processes operated really was a foundational activity for the GovCon industry we know today. Some of the largest companies, the most successful companies in the industry, whether they be Leidos or Khaki, or I don't want to leave anybody out. That's not, I don't want to insult anybody, but you know who they are. They're companies that really emerged from that period of time when the application of technology to improve mission outcomes in government, whether they be civilian missions or defense missions, really began to take hold. And the last, 20 years have been a testament to again, what, great companies and great people and clients that are willing to take a little risk can do. And I know government gets a lot of, flack for not being efficient and too much waste and too much fraud and all the things that we know to be true. But if you look at the enormous improvement in the way government missions are operated today and how they've improved over the last couple of decades, it's really phenomenal. And I give credit to clients who have taken a lot of risk and worked really hard, companies that have, again, taken a lot of risk and worked really hard, and then people who were allowed to innovate and implement solutions that in many cases people couldn't have imagined before they were given the freedom to implement those solutions.
And you had the kind of proliferation of technology and the internet happening in the early 2000s, laid on top of 9/11, which just transformed kind of the mission and the focus for government, right? Do you remember, where were you on 9/11? Do you remember?
Well, I remember exactly where I was. I had just gotten into my office in Roslyn. We were about on the 8th floor, I think. And I walked in, and Grady Means, who was the then managing partner, said, look at this. And he had a TV in his office. Not everybody did back then. We saw what was happening up in New York. I got back to my office, and shortly later, I heard the window shake, and I saw the flume of smoke come up where the plane had hit the Pentagon. We actually had staff and clients actually lost a client in the Pentagon because that was the wing where we were working that the plane hit. At the time, it was PricewaterhouseCoopers that I worked for. We had a consultant that we lost into the Trade Center. And I remember the rest of that day, trying to make sure all of our people were accounted for, because there was a lot of misinformation floating around DC about the old executive office building potentially being targeted. There was just, and by the way, those of you who have been around the city for a while know that the daycare for some of government employees are at the old executive office building, so you had people in the office who had kids, in that daycare. And so there was a lot going on. And I remember, everything had settled down that day. Everybody was out of the office. I think I was, one of the last people, if not the last person to leave the office. And at the time we lived at Old Town. So I left Roslyn, got on the Parkway. They had just opened it up. And, you had, all the Jeeps with, with mounted, weapons on them, that were aligning the Parkway. You could see the Pentagon still smoldering by that time. I just remember thinking to myself, who could have imagined?
Yeah.
12 hours ago.
Yeah.
Having experienced this day and watching what I was watching driving down the Parkway.
And how it was going to change
the world. How it was
change
going to
the
change the
world
world.
and the future of the industry that you were just getting into, if you think of it that way. Yeah. I think everybody remembers where they were. I think it's Bill Bodie told me on, we talked last week, did his recording, and he was in the Pentagon with the Secretary of the Air Force when it happened. So,
I remember that. We won't spend too much time on it. But I remember walking down to the river that night with our dog, and James Carville. You probably know him. He was in the Clinton administration. He was our neighbor at the time, and his wife, Mary Madeline, was Dick Cheney's chief of staff. I think that was her title actually at the time. And we expressed our shock of what had happened that day. And I asked him if he, knew where Mary was. And I said, all I know is that she is safe. I said, well, that's great. And it was an amazing day. But as we all know, sadly, all the families, all the people that were lost, all the families that were affected forever. But then, all the sacrifice that occurred, in many respects, you could say is still occurring as a result of the evil that exists in the world, and it's warfare has changed, diplomacy has changed, the way the world operated has changed. So it was that day, it was a single day, but the effect that day had on pretty much everything has really been extraordinary.
So you spent From there going forward, you were in IBM, helping to transform that business and helping customers transform. To talk about your journey through IBM, because I know you brought that when you came into the kind of the LOGCAP world from the IBM. You brought a lot of perspective from a different area of government contracting.
Yeah, I had, being at IBM and being at a large technology company was never the plan, but it turned out to be a total blessing. I mean, the people and the capabilities that are IBM are just amazing. Words can't express it. It was big and it was daunting, and at first, as all of us, what did we get ourselves into? But in hindsight, it couldn't have been a bigger blessing because, and I'll speak to the government aspect of that combination because there are lots of different aspects to it, but I'll keep it focused on GovCon here. To take an organization that had deep mission and business process expertise, which we had at PwC, and by then an emerging technology business, and combine that with all that IBM has to offer. And many of you may remember that in the late 90s, IBM had spun off its federal systems division. So IBM really, at that time, had a nascent federal services business, but we had all of the great capabilities and people and research and everything that IBM had to offer at our disposal. And then it was up to us. And then it was up to us to comprehend all that we had to bring to our clients, package those capabilities up in a way that could be easily consumed by our government clients. And, I'm pleased and proud to say that the team just knocked it out of the park. I mean, there was a lot of things that people could have only imagined in terms of technological capabilities that we were able to bring to our clients. Again, to do that, we needed to have clients willing to take a risk with you, point one, and B, staff willing to kind of work hard, take a risk, put their careers on the line, and do things that had never been done before. And it was an amazing journey that really, I stayed in the U.S. public sector business, which included federal. We grew that to about $3 billion at the time. And then around 2013-ish, then I transitioned to lead the global government business, where I got on a plane and flew around the world and work with clients in the Middle East and Indo-Pacific and Australia and all over the world, Europe. Spent 3 years doing that. They're about an $8 billion business. And then retired from IBM in 2015. And people ask, why did you retire? And I always had this itch that I could be a public company CEO. I thought I might be a little bit past the prime to do that. But I was able to retire from IBM at a good time, a good transition time. Walked out the door not knowing what was going to be next, and then lo and behold, I got a call from the people at Vectrus and talked to them for several months, and then ended up at Vectrus.
Before we go into the Vectrus story, I want to go back to IBM because you and I've talked before a few times. And you know how passionate I am about helping transitioning military. And, this year we've done a lot of work helping a lot of the transitioning federal workforce, coaching them. A lot of the SESs we brought into our kind of community as well. And you were telling me about what you built at IBM, kind of this incubation lab for government. And
Sure, yeah. It's still there. It's a foundation. I think it's a technical term. It's the IBM Center for the Business of Government. You can look it up. It exists today. Dan Chinook, a great patriot and a stalwart of government in general in the GovCon industry, is the executive director of it. And if you go on their website, I think we began it plus or minus like in 1998 or 99 was the first year. And so there's 20 plus years of content of reports that have been written, books that have been written. There's at least there used to be, I think there still is, a radio show that happens most Saturday mornings during the season, whenever that season is. And it was a lesson to me because we had to defend it because, IBM wasn't an easy place to defend costs that were a little bit out of the ordinary. But what we were able to do is we were able to turn the center into a place where both government and industry came together and could, and in both a non-attributional way and in a safe way, innovate and create ideas and to try out concepts. And I couldn't be more thrilled and proud of what the team has accomplished over the last 15 years of really taking the center into something that I believe is a real asset to the entire GovCon industry. And I know it's an asset to the SCS community and the other, professional government leaders, both in the U.S. and it also supports state and local governments as well. So it was an important lesson to me that sometimes you just have to take the risk. And if something sounds good on the surface and can add value and can develop people's thinkings and give them a free space to try to create and innovate, great things can happen. And all the great leaders, along the last 25 years who have kept the center fresh and going, I can't thank them enough because they've done a big service to the industry.
Very cool. Yeah, that's an interesting story, and it's great to hear it's still going on too. It's really cool. So then you thought you retired, and you get a shot you get a chance to take over the leadership of Vectrus, a company that's been around for years. I mean, I remember when it was the ITT Boss contract in K-Town, and the transformation would went ITT to Excellus to, and then finally to Vectrus. And you came on board, 2016? Is that right?
2016, yes, sir.
Okay, so talk about the hiring process. How'd you get that job, and the process you went through, and why do they think this guy out of IBM was a good fit to come in and lead a company that had traditionally been kind of a Army logistics government contractor?
Well, the history of what is now V2X, as you say, it's a 70 plus year history, almost 80 years now. ITT had what at the time was called a technical services business that was spun out with Excellus, which was sold to somebody. I lost the thread on that one, but immediately turned around and spun what was then Vectrus out as a standalone public company. And the focus was what I call the operational segment of the broader federal services marketplace. And it had a great history in serving the military predominantly in remote and austere environments. And it also had some very good global IT networking capabilities. So there was really great raw material there. And getting back to your question on how did I arrive, the chairman had heard about me through a mutual contact, reached out, and I started a conversation with him and then ultimately the board that was really about a 9 months consulting process. So I would joke with Lou Giuliano that if I didn't get an offer soon, I was going to send him an invoice for consulting, and of course he laughed and I laughed. But what became clear in that time is that there was enormous capabilities inside what was then Vectrus to really transform what we believed at the time, nobody knew, would be a bifurcation in the government services industry, where you would have companies that would continue down the path of the Khakis and the IBMs and the Leidoses that were more, we'll call it technology centric, if you will. And then you would have firms that would focus on what I called then and still call the operational segment of the broader federal services marketplace. And, lo and behold, that's what happened. And early on in the tenure, like on day one in 2016, we had a choice. We had a choice to be we would joke, to be a smaller, more diverse company, because we were then about $1 billion. And, most of that work was going to go to the next version of LOGCAP. So we could be a smaller, more diverse company, or we could do with what many people thought couldn't be done. We could win a prime seat on LOGCAP, which would give us the foundational contract base then to grow and to prosper from there. So we had a strategy that we were very public about. That, talked about transforming the operational segment of the broader federal services marketplace. We talked, you can go back and look at the old earnings releases. We talked about the converged infrastructure, where you would take technology and insert technology into predominantly operational processes. And we began to operate that way. And sooner or later, I would say sooner than later, the people began to believe that they could actually transform an industry. It was the people who had been with those missions for years, in many cases, 2 decades since 9/11. And in some cases, it was people that I brought in from either IBM or other technology-rich companies, both in government and commercial industries. And we created a set of solutions and what I call an ethos that allowed the organization to believe that we could be a leader in this emerging and transforming industry that was a subset of the broader federal services marketplace. And that subset is still $120, $130 plus billion a year. So it's a large,
never going away.
It's a large industry. It's not going away. And again, having no power of clairvoyance, obviously, those who know me will attest to this. But it's clear how markets work, and it was clear that operational segment of the broader federal services marketplace was going to consolidate, and we could either be a consolidator or a consolidatee. And it's more fun, and B, it's more meaningful to be a consolidator. So the first thing we had to do is we had to win LOGCAP. And lo and behold, not only did we win a seat, we won 2 regions. We won the CENTCOM region and the Indo-PACOM region. We had some great success.
I was there April 19th, 2019, sitting in the sunshine outside the office in Colorado Springs with Ken Shreves and Kevin Leonard. Yeah. And they both got a call and they started grinning ear to ear. And I was like, I remember that.
On one hand, it was hard to believe because it was like, who would have imagined? But on the other hand, it was completely logical because it was clear. This was a 18 months, 2-year sales process. I was involved. The names that you had mentioned, everybody was involved. We had the entire leadership of the company show up to Orals and Rock Island. And, it was less of a presentation of a proposal and more of painting a picture of how the industry could work and how our clients' missions could operate better and how our clients in, both acquisition and operations could transform what they do to be more impactful in the ultimate end mission of the warfighter. You really streamlining the way that logistics and operations could be handled in such a way that the warfighter, has what they need when they need it. They're living in quarters that are cleaned. Things are moving seamlessly through global supply chains. all of the things that are still work in process. None of this is just done today, and it won't be done in 5 years from now or 10 years from now. But it's on a path to be much better. And I think our clients saw that. I know our people believed it, and I couldn't be more proud of what the teams and our clients did together. And I was, after a while, nothing more than a distant coach, just cheering everybody on and kind of watching what they did.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, and just to touch on another great thing you did was leading the merger with Vertex, right?
When we started this journey, we were $1 billion public company, of which the market doesn't need $1 billion public company, frankly. And I had talked about, prior to LOGCAP, every competition we had 8, 10, 12, 15 competitors. Well, over this period of time, the market consolidated. We did 5 or 6 acquisitions prior to Vertex. KBR had done some acquisitions. We know what had happened with PAE and Amentum now. Again, with having no power of clairvoyance, where I started my last little diatribe from, it was clear how markets were going to react. And this market was going to consolidate. There were going to be a few stronger companies left. And today there are 5 or 6.
Yep.
And those companies will be larger and more capable. And that will continue. That's just the way markets work. We don't have to pretend that, we can see the future. As more capable companies enter the space, there will be consolidation that occurs. And what will continue to happen is that the operational segment will begin to include things that are more highly technical than, and we can talk about that later, than even today. But getting to Vertex, we were small, we grew, and we created scale. And we were not that diverse in terms of our clients, that we were still highly concentrated on LOGCAP. So what Vertex combination really completed 2 of the 3 legs, is what I would call it. The first thing we had to do is to gain scale, which we were doing organically. Then Vertex came, and then we took that scale to another level. I think they're going to be $5+ billion this year, is what I think I recall from the last earnings call. But the aerospace maintenance and the training missions came along with Vertex. So now you had everything at V2X, from the IT networks to the logistics, to the base operations, to the aircraft maintenance, to training. And there's also an increasing capability. There was, and there is today, in the intelligence communities. So the Vectrus as a business, V2X as a business, V2X as an investment, is a much more diverse, scaled organization.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing to watch the transformation from, like I said, I was there the day you guys want LOGCAP and help support that, and the acquisitions, and then the merger. But you got a lot to be proud of there. It's still a great company.
And the teams today, again, I just kind of cheer them on from afar. I'm a shareholder, so I'm allowed to cheer them on.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
They're continuing to do great things in the marketplace, and I couldn't be more thrilled to see them be successful.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the future of the industry. You've been a major part of shaping kind of the contemporary history in the industry. What do you see happening now? What is 2025? I think there hasn't been a year as transformative in government contracting since 9/11, since 2001, because all these different things are happening with technology and foreign policy and new administration. What are the couple of the things you see happening in 2025 that are going to have far-reaching impacts on the future of government contracting?
Kind of getting back to my theme on markets. I mean, markets are going to continue to demand more from clients. Markets are going to continue to demand more from companies. And that's going to be both in terms of continued growth and continued margin expansion. And I think what we're going to continue to see is a solidification of we'll call it the more technology-driven cohort and the more operational-driven cohort. And in the technology-driven cohort, you're going to see continued growth and margin expansion as the newer technologies. I know AI is an overused set of words now, but it is the amount of compute capability and the amount of sensing capability and the amount of data will continue to transform those highly technically oriented missions in such a way that the newer capabilities will become stalwarts of this technology cohort. And because of that, they'll continue to grow. They'll continue to expand margin, just like it always happens. There'll be smaller, innovative companies that will come along and do wonderful, like always happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll ultimately get acquired into the larger cohort. And I think we're at an inflection point right now that over the next, 2 to 4 years, you're going to kind of see that cycle come into kind of full acceleration, if you will. Then when we talk about the operational segment of the broader federal services marketplace, I couldn't be, more excited to think about the possibilities. When you start thinking about driverless vehicles and you start talking about robotics and other sorts of automation that can be employed to perform operational missions in a better, faster, cheaper way, in a really transformative way. It's really amazing. You think about all of the movements that occur in the supply chain and how much more efficient that can be done through things like driverless vehicles, sense and respond logistics, and all of the great capabilities that are being utilized today, no doubt, but can be really done at scale. Robotics is a big deal. Robotics is a big deal both in warehouses. Robotics will be a big deal in base management. Robotics will be a big deal in aircraft maintenance. Yep. And the way soldiers, sailors, airmen, everybody is trained, the commercial, including the civilian segments, training will change in a big way as well. So that operational segment is ripe for a real transformative boost by the application of some of these newer technologies.
So then let's fast forward. I want you to predict the future. You said you're not clairvoyant, but I think you got a pretty good sense of knowing where things are heading. Let's go ahead. Not 10 years, not 5 years. Let's go 3 years. It's 2028. 3 years from now, what does government contracting look like through your lens? What do you see? Who's standing? Who's leading the market? What's the government buying?
I won't get into it. Who's leading it will depend in large part on who takes prudent and thoughtful risk and is successful. But I would project that in that 2 to 4 year period you're talking about, the companies that can really embrace the newer technologies, the emerging technologies like robotics, like AI. We're only a fraction of the way through analytics and predictive analytics. We're just barely touching the surface, in my view, in the public sector more broadly. But those companies who can, with speed and with agility, bring those capabilities to marketplace to transform client missions. And I would like to think that the way in which we contract, it's on the precipice of changing now, but will change, that companies that lead in selling outcomes versus selling inputs, those are the companies that are going to be positioned for great both market and financial success. And that's both in the operational segment as well as the technology segment. We will see a continued merging of the way we deliver services with the way we deliver product. And that combination of services and product together will allow companies to prudently sell outcomes and governments to prudently acquire outcomes. And we can see some examples of that happening today at the VA and the DoD and other places. But I would project that may move faster over the next 2 to 4 years. And those companies that embrace that new way of delivering capabilities will be the winners.
What do you think about 2028? Who's investing in this industry? Do we continue to see the VC and the PE guys coming in? Do we see more companies going publicly traded? How do you see the financing of the industry?
I think the financing model, in my view, works just fine. But I think everybody is going to have pressure to go faster. I know I'm not from the PE world, as you know, but I've been around the marketplace. The private equity companies are always under pressure to basically monetize their investments more quickly. And frankly, companies that are either public companies and are today private companies are going to, have to find ways to be more predictable in terms of their results, including profit, free cash flow, everything that investors look for. And I think there's going to be an increasing focus on speed because the commercial industries, the whole world's competing for the same, set, for the same financing, for the same capital, right? And you can't allow the non-public sector industries to have an increasingly better return than the public sector industries. So you're going to see in the public sector and in federal and GovCon, in our case, we're going to see there's going to be an absolute need for us to return investments quicker, which means we're going to have to implement outcomes in a better, faster, more intelligent way. That's just the way markets work.
Yep, a need for speed on the ROI. That makes perfect sense. It'll be an exciting 3 years. What's Chuck Prow going to do in this?
I don't know. I've not proved successful at staying retired, although I'm enjoying the heck out of spending time with my grandkids, which has been a real blessing of the last 18 months of being quote unquote retired. But I've taken on a couple of advisory roles that I don't want to talk about now, really. But I could see myself maybe involved in another operational role, but it would be something that would have to be impactful. I'll stay involved in GovCon, as we've talked about. GovCon as it's really been since I arrived in the late '90s, more of an avocation than a vocation. And the roles that I've taken on have been really focused on growth, strategy, and people development. I'm doing a little bit around corporate governance and risk management, but my passion is really around value creation, and that's always about strategy. It's about people, and it's about how can we create environments where companies and their people can get better at what they do and I always like to say, and make our clients famous. Because
clients famous. I like that. It's good. Wrapping up, give me one word, just one. It could be hyphenated if you have to. Give me one word about your gut feeling about the future of the industry.
I would say I'm torn between two words. One is acceleration.
Okay.
And the other is hyphenated. It's prudent risk taking. But I'm going to go with acceleration because I think those companies and frankly those agencies and those departments that are going to be successful in this next phase that industry and governments are embarking upon are going to be those companies who can quickly embrace the emerging capabilities in such a way that they can provide maximum impact for their missions, and for the in the case of civilian agencies and for the citizens who utilize those services.
I feel there's a lot of imagery around this speed, acceleration. It makes sense. The acquisition cycles are going to tighten up. The return to investors has to come quicker. Technology is certainly going to have a huge impact on whatever is going to happen. And you got a great track record throughout your career of bringing in new ideas of how to put technology in. And so it's great to hear your perspective. Chuck Prow, thanks for coming and joining us on the Future GovCon podcast. It's been a lot of fun.
I appreciate it. It's been enjoyable talking with you, and I look forward to seeing you in DC soon.
Yeah, let's go hit that Balkan restaurant again. That was great. So, and to everybody listening in, hopefully you enjoyed the show. This podcast is for you, so you can get insights from great leaders like Chuck Prow. If you liked it, share this with your friend. Make sure you subscribe. If you got any questions or ideas, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always there, as you probably figured out. And make sure you're following us on LinkedIn, Precision Talent Solutions, because we're putting out news every day about policy, contract awards, major programs, M&A. So it's a good way to keep your finger on the pulse. And we look forward to seeing all of you on our next episode. Thanks for tuning in. Bye, everybody. So thanks for joining me on the Future of GovCon. If you enjoyed today's conversation, share it with a friend. Follow the podcast and subscribe to YouTube so you don't miss our bold predictions shaping our industry. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn and learn more about Precision Talent Solutions at pts.careers. Thanks for tuning into the Future of GovCon, and see you next week.